We're in the book of Bamidbar. We are in the wilderness. The desert of Sinai that our ancestors trooped through is full of possibility and hope. It's a place out of time and space where things can really happen, things like revelation. But it's also just that. It is a wilderness. It's a place that is scary, where every place you stop on the journey toward freedom bears some risk of danger. So in our parsha this week, Behalotecha, the onward march through the desert continues. It started many, many weeks ago in our reading, but it was interrupted by the drama of the revelation at Sinai. And now in our reading on the first day of the second year since they fled slavery, the Israelites set up the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the holy space where God would dwell among them, along with the tent of meeting where God spoke to Moses. As they created this Mishkan, a cloud mysteriously covered it. At night, this cloud had the likeness of fire until morning. And this is what happened every day. Cloud coverage in the daytime, fire over them at night. When the cloud lifted completely, that is when they knew that it was time to pack up their stuff and move along. When the fire cloud settled back in, they knew that they needed to stop and rest. I have read this portion, and specifically this piece about this cloud, umpteen times in my life, but only this week did it dawn on me that this was a fire cloud of protection. Many commentators actually see God's role, and Moses' role too, as parents to this burgeoning people who often behave like children, and later on in our parsha, I won't talk about it, but they're going to whine a lot, and then it'll be like weeks and weeks of whining. But this means that God, among the many personas that God takes on in the Torah, is in this narrative primarily a protector, a parent, a guardian. This reading became the focal point of the parsha for me this week. I am feeling like we desperately need a fire cloud of protection hovering over us. We need a fire cloud to give us direction in this incredibly uncertain time. This is my second week back from my 2-month sabbatical, which was lovely, except that the world was still falling apart while I took some much needed rest time. I came back this week to everything that has happened this week, to unlawful ICE raids and a terrifying move toward autocratic rule in my home area of Los Angeles, with broader implications for our country at large. One of the ways that I spent my sabbatical was volunteering at one of my favorite places, my local day worker center in Mountain View, where the front door that has been open for the decades that I've taught English there, now shut. You have to knock, you have to make sure that you belong there because they're scared. And then on Monday and Tuesday, and then just again, Manny's Cafe down the street was vandalized. Broken glass from multiple windows reminded Manny, who is here with us tonight, it's good to see you, of Kristallnacht in Germany in 1938, when Nazis smashed synagogues and Jewish businesses, the night of broken glass. The damage was caused by some who had been at a rally protesting the unlawful ICE activities in LA and elsewhere, a rally where Manny himself had been protesting that day as well, and many in our community had been protesting that very thing. While a few other buildings in the Mission were sadly also targeted, Manny's was the only business to be graffitied with words like, "The only settler is a dead one," the only good settler is a dead one, "Die Zionist," "Death to Israel is a promise," and one particularly with Manny's name. If you haven't been keeping up with this over the past few years, although I imagine that most folks here have been, the reason that he's been boycotted, attacked, and picketed is that he has expressed gratitude that his Afghan father was able to flee to Israel to escape persecution. Manny wrote to his community listserv this week, laying out beliefs that he has had to explain too many times. He wrote, "I believe in peace, deeply, urgently, desperately. I believe both Israelis and Palestinians deserve to live with dignity and safety in their ancestral homeland. I believe Netanyahu is an extreme autocrat who's motivated more by maintaining power than advancing peace and has unnecessarily, unjustly, and inhumanely decimated Gaza and its people. I'm horrified by the settler violence in the West Bank, the demolition of people's homes, and the stripping of people's rights and basic humanity. I believe Hamas is a terrorist organization that has caused immense suffering I've seen with my own eyes, and which cannot be normalized or justified. I pray for the return of the hostages now, for a ceasefire now, and for an end to the killing of innocent people caught in the crossfire everywhere in the region now. In fact, Manny shared in an article that I read, because there have been many, many this week, that he was actually in the West Bank very recently meeting with Palestinian activists. So he wrote elsewhere, even if I held different beliefs than I do, there's no excuse for targeting a Jewish business owner in the way that I've been targeted. We are all scared and upset about what we're seeing in Israel and Palestine, but if we can't hold complexity, if we can't acknowledge each other's humanity even when we disagree, then we've lost the thread. So I went to Manny's on Tuesday after I heard what happened. The book area was cordoned off, so I sat down just outside of it and stared at it for a very long time, just taking in the scene. If you've read some articles about this, you may have seen it in the newspaper or for yourself down the street. A window was on the ground with Free Gaza spray painted on it. Shattered glass was all over the place in a boarded up hole. The rest of the shop had also been vandalized, but something about it happening in the book corner really got me. Manny opened this cafe in 2018 as a space for civic engagement and connecting about local and national issues, expressly a place where people could talk civilly about their differences. The books, as many of you have probably seen and bought, hopefully, cover social justice topics such as queer rights, progressive icons, anti-racism material, and so on. So I sat there staring at this particular crime scene. I know that this act of violence only represents a small handful of people, but it still stands that we progressives are known to do a fine job of tearing ourselves apart without help from anyone. Here is a community leader who gives free coffee to unhoused residents, organizes trash pickups, election canvassing, hosts elected officials and candidates, has hosted our queer and religious panels there on a number of occasions, talks on the housing crisis in San Francisco. I rocked out to disco while phone baking there last fall. Manny put up the lights that make 16th Street a more welcoming, connected place. In the midst of what is happening in our country right now, the daily rights that are being stripped from us, from immigrants, access to health care, the LGBTQI community under attack, especially trans people, it was heartbreaking for me to see the results of such violence at the hands of folks who had been at the very same rally hours before. And of course, this comes just weeks after anti-Semitic attacks in Boulder and DC. I am quite jealous of our ancestors that they had a God-given protective fire cloud to protect them as they journeyed through the wilderness. Like the sukkah of peace that we pray for every Shabbat with the Hashkivenu prayer, I want everyone on this planet who is feeling vulnerable and alone and scared to be able to look up and see a protective cloud or a protective cloud of fire at night above their heads. Later in the week, this week, a woman who had protested Manny's shop for years ago, came to check in on him, he wrote. They had gotten to know each other over time. She came in to support him, making sure he knew that she did not condone this violence. Manny wrote, that moment represents what's possible when we stay in relationship and conversation with each other and refuse to let hate win. I think that there's more to learn from my fire cloud than just a longing for protection, although I want to keep a hold of that and I want it to move down the street to Manny's. In our Parsha, the fire cloud covers the Mishkan, the sacred space that holds God's presence, and also the tent of meeting, which we don't talk as much about. Here at Sha'ar Zahav, we talk a lot about Mishkan, but the tent of meeting is very important. We learned back in the book of Exodus that when the pillar of cloud covered the Israelites during the day, that cloud was poised at the entrance of the tent of meeting. This is the place where Moses comes face to face with God. V'diber Adonai el Moshe panim el panim ka'asher yidaber ish el rehu. God would speak to Moses face to face as a person speaks to a friend. The Zohar comments that amidst a moment of crisis, there is no healing in the world except gazing face to face. So the Zohar is telling us that what happened in that tent of meeting has to be our reality all the time. That not just Moses gets this panim el panim experience of God, we look into each other's eyes as images of the divine all the time. Healing comes from gazing at one another in that way, sitting down together and listening to each other. So when I read Manny's words that who he is has been misunderstood for years, it is so clear that when we encounter someone, we are only encountering or experiencing a part of them. We need to take the time, we need to learn more. The commentator Sfat Emet, a Hasidic master, wrote, "Hearing requires being empty of everything." Just take that in. Hearing requires being empty of everything. This is the essence of exile today as well, our inability to empty ourselves. So for this Hasidic master writing a while back, this is the essence of why we are all in exile, that we are unable to empty ourselves, to put ourselves aside, to truly listen to somebody. How do we do that? How do we sit in, I don't yet know who this person is? New York Times columnist David Brooks asks, what am I not asking that would help me understand you better? What am I missing? In Manny's words, quote, "We need to be the city that leads, that demonstrates how we can come together in difficult moments, how we can give people, especially our neighbors, the benefit of the doubt, how we can ask questions first and judge second, how we can be willing and able and even excited to sit down with people we don't know and understand them." We need to keep meeting each other panim el panim, face to face, amidst all of this chaos and all of this crisis. I will be at Manny's next Tuesday at lunch at noon, talking to people panim el panim. I hope you will all join me. Shabbat shalom.